In this video, I'm going to show you how to start an Azure Automation Runbook with a webhook. Azure Automation is Microsoft's cloud-hosted automation solution. It uses PowerShell or Python scripts called Runbooks to perform automation tasks in Azure or on premises with the use of a hybrid worker. In this video, I'm going to show you how to start these Runbooks with a webhook. Before I get into it, I want to ask everyone who watches these to take a second and hit the subscribe button. This lets me know that these videos are being watched and that I should keep making them. With that out of the way, why should you care about webhooks? Azure Automation can start runbooks on a schedule, but that has its limitations. A lot of monitoring and ticketing systems can send webhooks. Imagine if a service stops and you're able to send a webhook from the monitoring solution to a runbook that starts the service. Or a request for a new user is sent to the service desk ticketing system, and that triggers a webhook that starts the provisioning process. These are reasons why you should invest in learning about webhooks. Before I get into that, let's talk about the difference between a webhook and an API. Webhooks are similar and sometimes confused with APIs. A webhook is a one-way communication. It's similar to sending an email. Once you hit send, you have no reliable confirmation that the email was received. That email may have instructions such as run a report or update a file. In that case, you can check to make sure that's done. An API is interactive. Think of it like an instant message. If you hit send on a message asking someone for a file, they can send that file back through the chat service. With an API, information is passed to the API with the expectation of something in return. The analogy does fall apart once we get into the details, but just think of a webhook as a trigger and an API as a transaction. A webhook is a custom URL passed to a service, in this case Azure Automation, with a payload that the runbook can consume. You can't just send any data to it. The webhook and the runbook are tightly coupled. The webhook has three parts: the URL, the request header, and the request body. The webhook name is also included in its payload. Let's move on to examples. These examples are kept simple for the sake of demonstration. The runbook simply output data to the output stream for us to view. In real world, these runbooks would actually consume the data. With that, let's get started by creating a runbook. Okay, buckle up everyone, it's time for demos. I've got a couple demos here, and going back to what I said before, the real goal is just to show how to pass data into the runbook. So I'm not really going to go over doing anything in the actual runbook other than writing the output to see how it's formatted, what it looks like. The goal being you can use that to write your scripts or your automation tasks that can consume that data that's being passed in. So with that, let's start by adding a runbook. I'm going to call this CIR Runbook Test. Yep, and I'm going to set the type to PowerShell, and I'll leave the description blank. So this is going to take me into the editor. I'm going to leave it blank and just hit publish. I need to hit publish because you have to have a published runbook to get the webhook to show up. It's blank. I'm going to come back to it in just a second. But first I'm going to set up the webhook. So I create the webhook. I'm going to call this one CIR Webhook 02. And I'm going to have it enabled. It expires by default within a year. So if you're using these, you might want to keep that in mind. You can either extend the date or you can just come back and create a new webhook. I'm going to copy the URL. You can't see it there, but you can here. I don't mind sharing it because this is going to be long gone by the time anybody sees it. I'm copying that into a notepad because, as it says here, when I hit save, I can't retrieve that URL. That's a security token at the end of it, so I can't get that again. So just make sure to copy that URL and save it someplace safe. And I'm going to create. All right, now I'm going to go back here and we'll go to the first example. And I'm not going to really go over too much what this is. I assume if you're watching a video on running Azure Automation webhooks, you're probably pretty comfortable with PowerShell and can figure it out. But I will say all it's doing is grabbing some values that are being passed in and writing them to the output stream. So let's go in and edit that. It's funny that there's no paste in the right click. So I'm just going to paste that and save, and don't forget to publish. Okay, I'm going to go back and grab this URL and paste it in here. This is a URL I used for a previous demo. So I'm going to update the URL, and here's all that's going on. It's going to create a variable called body message, and that just has an array or a hash table with the key message and the value test message. Down here, it's going to convert that to JSON. It has to be formatted as a string to be passed through the webhook. So I do that by converting it to JSON. You could also do XML if you wanted to. And then I've got a header here, which is a hash table of a message and then started by me. So once I run that, if I look at the response, you can see it's giving back a job ID. I could use that to query the job if I needed to. I don't need to, so I'm going to come back into the Runbook. You can see a job started. It's queued up, and if we give it a couple seconds, it should complete. It's complete. Let's go in and take a look. Here you can see if there's errors, warnings, what the input is. I'm going to look at the output stream, and this is exactly what I expected. So here is the header, started by me. I've got the webhook name and then the request body, and that's in a JSON format. So that's good, but being that this is a PowerShell runbook, I'd rather have that into a PS custom object instead of JSON. So in my next example, we're going to fix that. The code I'm using is available on my website on www.seraltos.com. You can take a look at it there if you want to get more details or try it yourself. So I'm going to edit the runbook. Here we're doing something a little bit different. We're taking the parameter, we're grabbing the input as webhook data. And down here in this line, I'm converting from JSON the request body into this variable called body. And then I'm going to write the output of the the second message that starts with 0. So that's the second message that will get output. And then I'm going to get the full body as well as get the member. So we'll save, we'll publish. Yep. Now I need that URL again. Probably should have just kept that in a variable someplace, but this works. Okay, so here I've got 2 values for the message, and then I'm going to pass that through just like before. And we'll go back, hit refresh. Here you can see it's queued up, and we'll give it a couple seconds to finish. And it's complete. Let's take a look at the output. So here we have the same information as before, started by Travis. We can see the webhook name. Here's the request body. That's actually was the first line where I was pulling the second value. You can see that's the second value there. This is the full body, so this is the output of the information that was converted from JSON. And here is the get member. So you can see here it's converted to a PS custom object. So what I did is I took a hash table, converted it to JSON, passed it through the webhook, and then within the runbook, took that JSON object and converted it back to a hash table or a PS custom object. And then I can access it or manipulate it within the runbook itself. So that's the basics of how you can pass data into a runbook from a webhook. Now, these are kind of some abstract examples that I'm showing, but if you can imagine passing in like a first name, last name, phone number into a runbook that creates a user, that would be a good example of where this information could be handy in the real world. One other thing, I mentioned that this URL is a security token. It's hidden after you create the webhook. It can't be retrieved, but you may want to add a second layer of security onto that. I'm going to run this example next, and this is not on the accompanying web post that I have on my blog, but I think you'll be able to figure this out. If we go to edit, I'm just going to paste it in and tell you what I'm doing. So here I've got 2 if statements, probably a better way to do this, but being quick and dirty for demonstrations, you can see what I'm doing. I have an if, it's going to look for webhook data. If not, I'll just write output that it doesn't have any data. But the inner one here is looking at the request header message. And if it equals started by Travis, it's going to run this. Else it's going to say not allowed to run the script. If we save, publish, now I need that. And I'm just going to change this to 1, 2, 3. So now if I run this, and you can see also I'm passing in an array instead of a hash table. Now we'll come back here and hit refresh, wait for it to finish. Okay, that's complete. Took a lot longer than I expected, but through editing you won't notice. So we'll go to output, and not allowed to run the script. Okay, so that is exactly what I expected because I changed the request header message from started by Travis to started by Travis 1, 2, 3. So let's go back and change this back. And we'll run it again. The point of this is if you wanted to add an extra layer of security, you could modify that message header and make the runbook check that first before running. Another way to use this would be for versioning. So you could say you could have version 1 or version 2 and then have some logic in the actual runbook that will handle the input based on the version that you're sending it. Let's go back here, go back to the test, and if we refresh, there's the last one. And we'll look at the output, and you can see here it ran. So that is exactly what I expected. So that's it. That's how you create a runbook, create a webhook, and then pass data into your runbook from the webhook. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, please hit the like and the subscribe button. That helps me know that people are watching and enjoying the content. Thanks a lot.